The Democratic Party is roiling after last night's presidential debate. It saw President Biden's poor performance raise a lot of questions about whether or not he's up for the job for the next 4 years. We have a lot to talk about tonight about last night as we dissect what happened during the debate. My guests are political analyst Dr. Sharice Nelson and Harrison Fields, former presidential writer and assistant press secretary for the Trump administration. Thank you all for joining the conversation. Sharice, I'll start with you. What happened last night with Joe Biden?
We saw an 80-year-old who has a stutter debate. We have known that Biden is not a great debater. And for someone that did not follow the rules because there wasn't much fact checking, you have to make a split decision on, do I follow the rules, number one, or do I then answer the question? We know that Joe Biden has a stutter. We know that Joe Biden's voice has declined over time. The campaign is saying that he had a cold, but besides all of that, Joe Biden did not perform well in debates in 2020. And it is in no way surprising that 4 years later, after dealing with a global pandemic, after dealing with an economic downturn, after dealing with international unrest, that the Democratic Party overprepared him at Camp David and ran his voice into the ground.
Harrison, would you agree with that? Your thoughts about that?
So I think that argument was a little bit all over the place. You blaming his age and then saying that he was trained too much and that his voice was overused and that's why his voice was down. No, the reality is he is incapable of doing the job. It was on display for the American people. Millions of people, left, right, middle, all said the same thing. This looks horrible. And that's what it was. It was just horrible. Like, we can talk about the refs, the moderators not jumping in. We can talk about how people weren't following the rules. When I was looking at Joe Biden, he looked like he was reading notes. Last time I checked, notes were banned. Can't confirm whether or not that's true or not, but it looked like he was reading notes. The whole thing was a disaster. And the thing about it is we were told for the week leading up to this that he was at Camp David, he was being drilled facts and all these things, and that he was going to get under Donald Trump's skin. Donald Trump was unfazed by everything. He spoke to the American people directly. He defended his record 4 years, and he delivered a message, an agenda of what he plans to accomplish if he's reelected on November 5th. And I think, just look at the snap polling from CNN. More than half of the country, 67%, thought that Trump ran away with this thing. So I'm going to be interested to see what the polling is going to do. I don't think Joe Biden did himself any favors. I'd be shocked if he agrees to do another debate. And I think President Trump is probably in the strongest political position he has been in since the day he walked down that golden elevator at Trump Tower.
Well, last night, Sharice, we saw Van Jones on CNN, red-eyed, emotional about the performance of Joe Biden. Whether you are a progressive or conservative, Democrat, liberal, what have you, I think that what we saw from Joe Biden, whatever the reasons are, whether it's the campaign says that he had a cold or what have you, the performance was at best very poor. Some would say it was a disaster. After that, do you believe that the Democrats have jumped on Joe Biden too quickly?
Absolutely not. That is the most ludicrous assertion that I have heard in this entire thing. As we are speaking right now, the Biden campaign is out having a rally. Joe Biden has no problem at rallies. Joe Biden has no problem with speeches. Did the campaign do a poor job in pumping up the American people by creating these false expectations of how he was going to perform? Absolutely. But you mentioned Van Jones, and if you watch the rest of that CNN coverage where Van Jones spoke, he retracted many of the things that he said because, as your guest here has no problem supporting a 34 convicted felon. We in the Democratic Party are the only people who decide that now we are going to back away from our horse in the race. We have no opportunity and no time at this current moment to back away from our best horse in the race. And let me tell you why he's our best horse in this race. He's our best horse in this race because he has 40 years of experience. 40 years of experience to then know that because I am old and because I am experienced, that I'm going to pack my team with folks that are 60 years and younger to make sure they can execute on all the policies that I have trotted it out and I've created. When we have to go to talk about substance, Donald Trump cannot stop himself from lying. If we want to talk about the CNN snap polls, then we will then also have to talk about the fact that Trump was counted for lying 34 times last night. So when we have this conversation about if we should back away from Joe Biden, it's the most ludicrous conversation and it should not even be entertained.
Harrison, what about that? I mean, the more than 30 obvious untruths that the former president was telling. The thing that struck me the most, and I'm sure that a lot of people even found offensive, was that he denied last night saying the things that he said about Charlottesville. I mean, that was really, really glaring. And even
beyond
the
that,
Charlottesville thing is the
veterans.
biggest hoax. The biggest
he lied
hoax
about veterans, Harold. Before
please,
we even get to Charlottesville, he lied about what he said about veterans, and then further down in the debate, agreed that he fired the general because he said it.
No, he fired him because he no longer was doing the mission that he is asked to as chief of staff. That's one. I was working in the White House during this time.
Which was lying about what he said.
You had 19 on the record sources that said that never happened. And this was all a political ploy. This is another hoax, just like the Russian laptop or the Hunter Biden laptop didn't exist. These are ploys that the media pushes, just like the Milwaukee hoax. These are just narratives that they run around with to distract the American people from the realities on the ground. When we're talking about what Trump may or may not have said back in 2019, we are losing focus from what the American people actually care about. And that is the fact that this country is on fire. Look at the immigration system. You have Black and brown communities across this country that are struggling because they have hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants pouring into their country.
So now you are going to sit here and continue to repeat these talking points that are absolutely ludicrous.
Point. Have you left your
Harold
backyard?
asked you a direct question about why he lied about Charlottesville. That
was another
question about Charlottesville.
So hold on.
Have you watched the whole speech?
Hold on,
If you watch the whole speech, you can. The clarity is very clear. He was not somehow giving a pass to white supremacists.
This is my
what he
show,
was not going to do is it was brush a broad
let me.
stroke
Now I'm going to mute both of you like they did on CNN last night.
And had to basically just fly off the face of the earth. He was not about to say that. And the same thing, Joe Biden said the same thing when it came to the pro-Hamas people. He said there was good people on both sides. So if you can cherry pick what you want to do about Trump, but your guy Joe Biden said the same thing about pro-Hamas people.
Harrison, I'm going to respectfully ask you to let me handle my show, and I will let you talk. My question to you was specifically about Charlottesville,
and I just answered that question.
No, well, I didn't hear you. I couldn't hear you because the host of the show was trying to get a handle on the show.
I think your internet's out because your connection isn't good.
I'm doing okay. So my point is, do you think it is appropriate? We all know you said what he did, what he may or may not have said. We do know that he said, as it relates to Charlottesville, that there were good people on both sides, and that's my question to you. Everyone knows that he said it. He said it during the course of a press conference. That is undeniable. That we can talk about.
Instead of taking 7 seconds of what was a 40-minute speech, I encourage you and your viewers.
Okay, but we're going to talk about. We have plenty. Are you going to answer my question?
I just did. What do you want me to say? You're not asking a question.
What I want you to say is you don't have a problem with him. So you don't have a problem with him saying that he didn't say what he said about Charlottesville. That's all I'm asking.
What I'm saying is that your characterization of what he said at Charlottesville is not my characterization of it. What is your President Trump has been asked?
What's your characterization of what he said about Charlottesville? Because I mean, it's pretty. That's pretty black and white. I think.
President Trump has been asked on multiple occasions, probably over 50 or 60 times, if he's condemned white supremacy, and he's done that ad nauseum. I've been in the White House and I've heard him say that directly to reporters several times. When referencing the Charlottesville incident, he did say that there were good people on both sides. And no, by no means was he saying that they were amazing in the sense of that they, his biggest thing is he's not going to paint a broad brush on every single person. If there was 5 good people on the other side of each debate, he's going to say, okay, well, at least there could have been 1 or 2 good people. Because what the left is doing to conservatives is that they want to paint a broad brush that we're all MAGA Republicans, that we're all white supremacists, that we're all threats to democracy, that we're all irredeemable, like Hillary Clinton said. President Trump is not going to allow the left to just characterize his supporters like that. And that's just why he speaks in generalities when it comes to analyzing what that event was like. Whether the language was appropriate or not, that's for your viewers to decide. But when you're just focusing on one moment in time and completely ignoring the fact that we are in 2024, forget about the past and focus on what's actually impacting your viewers. And it's not what he said in Charlottesville, because then you're going to ask, why are Black Americans
And Harold, that's where I disagree.
Okay, so
why are Black Americans are about to vote
and
for?
That's where I disagree,
Go ahead.
Harold. What he said in 2017 about Charlottesville, what he said in 2019 about Charlottesville is impacting me today. It's
What about
impacting
when
me
Joe
today because
Biden
it's
called
showing
Black
up
people?
Hold on,
in
let
a
her finish. Hold on, Harrison, let her finish. Go ahead.
It is showing up it is impacting me today because it's showing up in a 2025 plan where he is speaking and repetitively supporting some of the same stances that are attached to what he said in 2019. It applies to me today.
Name one.
It applies. Harrison, I let you finish. And what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to sit up here and listen to trumped out lies. And I use that idiom correctly because MAGA folks have no ability to deal with the truth. The truth is Biden looked like an 80-year-old man. But the truth also is Trump looked like a 78-year-old man slumped to the damn podium his damn self. So when we want to have this conversation, let's deal with the facts. And what he said in 19 directly affects me today because it's going to directly affect where funding goes for Black and brown people. It's going to affect how I live my life. It's going to affect inflation. It is going to affect my ability to go to the grocery store. It is going to affect my ability to buy a home because of interest rates and redlining.
And all that is doing well under Joe Biden.
That he had in 2019.
And all that is just fine and dandy under Joe Biden.
Today. And the idea that we should not reach back into history and look at the history of what this man has said is absolutely ludicrous.
Then do the same thing with Joe Biden.
Hold on, Harrison. Hold on. I need to take a break, but don't forget you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The Daily Drum will continue on Sirius XM Channel 141. The Original Quiet Storm with John Mons is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM Channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our discussion about last night's presidential debate. My guests are political analyst Dr. Sharice Nelson and Harrison Fields, former presidential writer and assistant press secretary for the Trump administration. Thank you so much. I want to continue with a point about the actual format. This was a very, very unique format for presidential debates in that for the first time in decades, there was no audience. There was the muting of the mics, and there was no live fact checking of either candidates. And I will say that the anchors for CNN did not, other than attempt to keep both candidates on point about answering the questions that they were asking, but no one fact checked either candidate. Do you think going forward, Teresa, that's a good idea or a bad idea for what may be the next debate, should it actually happen?
I think that not having fact checking means that there's not really a debate. A debate is not about you being able to spew propaganda for minutes on end. A debate is about a few things. It's about style, it's about substance, and it's about delivery. And when we talk about those three things, as far as substance goes, Joe Biden killed President Trump. When we talk about style, neither one of their styles were effective because when it comes to Trump, he couldn't coherently answer a question. And when it came to Joe Biden, his voice was so soft and so worn out that we could not hear many of the things that he had to say. So if we're talking about another debate, I truly believe that if fact checking is not going to be a part of the debate, then there's not a debate. It's a propaganda stunt and platform.
Harrison, your thoughts about the format for the debate?
I don't know if any of you have actually taken debate in school, but this is not how debates work. It is not the job of the moderator to fact check in real time. We saw the failures of that when Barack Obama and Mitt Romney were debating back in 2012, when they incorrectly fact checked Mitt Romney in favor of Obama. The moderators did exactly what they were supposed to do. And credit to CNN, because I did not think they were going to hold themselves to this standard. So kudos to them. They allowed the two men on stage to discuss their policies for a second term. And that's exactly what was allowed to happen. Now, the one thing that was very clear was that they had to basically cut off Joe Biden because he wasn't making sense. I mean, don't take my word for it. Go on social media last night. Mark Lamont Hill, no conservative by any means, he was saying that Trump was funny, that Trump was basically mopping the floor with Joe Biden. So you can spin it today because you realize that your pony is barely leaving the stable, and try to make it seem like there is going to be some revival of the Democrats campaign, but it's done. It is absolutely done. The American people going into this debate had Joe Biden at a 38% approval rate. That's not partisan. This is straight up, the American people aren't happy. They're not happy about inflation. They're not happy about the border. They're not happy about crime. They're not happy about these endless wars that are going on overseas. The list goes on. They remember what life was like.
And the American people
under
are also
Trump.
not happy about the fact that somebody has 34 felonies can become president of the United States again as well.
And you
So
don't
if you're
even know the
listing
crime.
down, you're
We
not going
don't
to
even
suck up
know
all
the
the airtime
crime.
here with a whole bunch of continuous rhetoric and points.
No,
You will not deal with the facts of the
just
matter.
because you
Deal
don't
with
like
the
what I'm
facts.
saying doesn't mean that they don't belong in this forum. And that's exactly why I'm here, because I'm speaking as a Black and Hispanic conservative to an audience of minorities who probably don't hear this point of view. So I'm sorry that you may be uncomfortable about what I'm saying, but I'm speaking my
Sweetheart,
truth,
I
my
am far
facts.
more comfortable than you'll ever believe. There is no reason that with a PhD in political science from Howard University that I'm not comfortable challenging your
Well, you're
lies.
trying to shut it
You can
down, and you're
you
trying
can
to
show
say
up in a
that
suit and
somehow these
tie
are trumped
and
up
dance the
lies.
jig all you want to, but it is not going to change
This is
the fact
exactly
that
why
Donald Trump is
this
not
is exactly
prepared
why
to be
you're doing
president
the
of these
dance and the
United
jig, and you're
States. You
basically
will
calling
not
me a house.
you will not sit up
That's
here and
exactly what you're
continuously
trying
tell
to do.
lies.
Okay.
No,
All
this
right.
is the
So
same type
let
of rhetoric
me.
that black conservatives always face, that we're somehow being tap dancers because we're coons and the rest of it. I'm not going to take it on this show. I'm a Black conservative because I believe in pro-growth economics. I
If
believe in
you are a
capitalism.
MAGA
I believe in
Republican,
faith.
you are dancing for Trump. There is
No,
nothing that you're going to say on this
no,
show
you're
that's
just
going to
locked in
change
the
my
Democratic
mind about that.
plantation. You are
So
locked
let
on the
me. So
Democratic
hold on.
plantation. They have
Let
you in
me.
shackles.
Okay. I don't mind a muscular conversation, but what I do not want is name calling and disrespect.
Don't tell your guests that they're
Okay. No,
dancing.
remember, Harrison.
Jig.
This is still my show, and
I hear you.
I said what I said. What I will say, and Harrison, I think you do have to admit that there is a difference between the MAGA wing of the Republican Party and traditional Republicans. That is not a dig. That is not
80% of our party
say
aligns
again.
themselves with 80% of our party, if not 90%. There's 90% of our party approves Donald Trump. And I was aligns with Mitt Romney and John McCain, God rest his soul. Those days are done. This party has moved on. And this is exactly why you're seeing more and more minorities come into our party, because they like what Trump is
Harold, can
here
I address
what he's
that?
offering.
Yeah, go right
Can I
ahead.
address that? No, I would love to address that because that's exactly my point, Harold. My point is that there are plenty of Black conservatives that do not support Trump. I have no problem with Black conservatives. I have them in my family. My dad is number 3 of 7 brothers. Out of the 7 of them, 4 of them are Black conservatives. So the idea that I do not respect Black conservatives is ludicrous as well. What I'm saying is that if a Black and Hispanic man, after this man has gone to Black barbershops, pretending that he can be a close to the Black community because he now has these 34 felonies. If this white male who is 78 years old has peddled gold tennis shoes at $400 saying that my people love these tennis shoes, referring to Black people, if this man can get on a national stage on CNN and say Black jobs and that immigrants are pushing people out of Black jobs, then what I am saying to you is that there is a very distinct difference between someone that is a Black conservative and someone that is a MAGA. What I'm also saying to that very point is the idea that the party has coalesced around him is also ludicrous. Because if we go back to the convention in 2020, he did not have a majority. He had a plurality, which is why him and Ted Cruz had to duke it out. Because Trump did not have the majority that he needed, he spent the last 4 years ripping apart the state infrastructure in the Republican Party to ensure that they will coalesce around him. He had the leader, Mitch McConnell, say on the Senate floor that he would not support Donald Trump, and just 2 weeks ago trotted himself into the Capitol House to then support him, because Trump has done the work of ripping the party down to its studs. So then if you do not agree with him, you are no longer a part of the party.
I don't know what politics you're analyzing today. The only party that is truly fractured is the Democratic Party. Their base is literally falling from underneath them. If you look at the hemorrhaging of Black and Hispanic votes from the Democratic Party, you are looking at Donald Trump winning an extraordinary amount of votes. And you look at young people are not enthused by this president. You have a situation where,
suffice it to say, Harrison, I don't think young people are enthused by either one of these two candidates.
You're seeing Donald Trump gain more of the youth vote than he has in any of the election, which is a great position for him to be out, being 129 days away from the election. You're also seeing a party that doesn't know what to do themselves. Do they support Israel or do they support Hamas? This Democratic Party does not know what to do. And Joe Biden at the helm of it, great for me, because that means we're going to have 4 more years of Donald Trump. And going back to what you were saying about all this race stuff, you're being so selective, because if you actually talk to Black folks like I do, they will tell you instantly they're no fans of Biden. They're definitely not fans of Kamala Harris, because if you look at the things they've said and the things that they've done, you're talking about actual impacts to the Black community. Remember the crime bills that Joe Biden sponsored, incarcerated Black folks that look like all 3 of us. If you look at what Kamala Harris did at HG, she did the same thing. And then when you could talk about rhetoric, what did Joe Biden say? He didn't want his kids going to schools because there were super predators there. And Kamala Harris called him out on the debate stage. He opposed busing.
Harold, I thought we weren't bringing up history. I thought at
Well,
one point
if you want to do it, then let's do it.
At one point, we can historically talk about previous statements, and then the next week,
because you're talking about 4 years ago, and I'm going back 30 years to a man who you're supporting.
Insulting. I'm a first lady of a church. I'm talking to congregants every day in my husband's church, and there are very few.
I go to a Black church too, and they don't support Joe Biden.
Support Donald Trump, which you are not going to continuously do. You can have your points and you can have your ways of seeing the world all you want to, but what we're not going to do is we're not going to subvert the facts. The facts are the facts. The facts are we're dealing with a 81-year-old man and a 78-year-old man.
You said that.
Idea of constantly having a conversation about the youth factor is a non-factor. We're talking when Donald Trump was a freshman in high school.
It's not about the age. I'm not talking about age.
The whole idea about
people under
age
35 aren't supporting Joe Biden because they can't afford a home.
Policies. Let's have a conversation about policy.
Yeah, I do want to talk. And and I
You're
think,
assuming that I think that young people aren't supporting Joe Biden because of his age. It's not about his age. It's because the fact that they can't afford a home, the fact that life was better for their parents and their grandparents than it is for them.
yeah,
We're moving
but hold
backwards.
on, let me stop you there, because I will tell you, as you know, I don't know about your finances, but I do know that my peers, and the Democrats were 100% right. They tried to tell them that 2017 tax deal, and these are the facts. It benefited the wealthy. It put 50 or 100. It benefited. Look, I'm straight up middle class, and I know that for me, my finances changed significantly as a result of that tax bill, and all of my other friends, my professional friends. It put $50 or $100 in the pockets of some working class people, but for people like myself, who are solidly middle class professionals, yeah, I am still feeling the pain. All of my friends.
And Harold, let me say, as the millennial,
hold on.
Harold, as the millennial whose pocket was hurt as well, the forgiveness of student loans, the moratorium first, and then the forgiveness of student loans helped my pocket tremendously under the Biden administration because of what you said. Money came out of my pocket in my fam. I'm a millennial, solid middle class. Money came out of my pocket during the Trump administration.
It is not the government's job to pay for your PhD.
I'm sorry.
It is not the government's job to pay for your PhD. And then the forgiveness of student loans increased the money in my pocket to try to level off the money that was lost on top of the child care tax credit that I got for both of our children in our home. So I can President Trump also supported
household what you are saying, Harold.
Yeah, and Harrison, again, he is President Trump wants to extend those tax credits, and we can talk about talking points, we can talk about rhetoric, we can talk about policy, but that 2017 change in the tax law, it did not benefit the middle class. I mean,
it did.
Yeah,
if you want to look at what it actually did.
I completely disagree with you about that, and you're not going to change my mind about that.
That's fine.
Let me move.
I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to talk to people about the actual facts about what that bill did. What it did.
And like I said, and look, like I said, we could talk about the geography of the DMV being very, very different from the rest of the country. But the bottom line is that tax law eliminated a great many tax deductions that the middle class.
They got rid of SALT tax deductions because if you live in a state like Maryland should not, just because Maryland has bad policies when it comes to taxes, people in Alabama should not be subsidizing people that live in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where I'm at, or the state of Maryland or New York City or New York.
But somebody could say the same thing. Like I said, I mean, you could say the same thing. Well, people in California shouldn't be doing the same things that's happening
Harold,
in Alabama.
I want to understand what he means by subsidizing. Please
explain.
What do you mean by subsidizing?
Yeah, because that doesn't explain your point, Harrison, if you can, please.
What the SALT tax deduction did, it allowed people in mainly blue states to have a deduction because their standard of living is a lot higher than it is in a state like Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, Alabama, Mississippi, conservative states, where the policy has been consistently to either don't have a state income tax, have lower taxes, property taxes are lower. The cost of living is extremely less expensive than it is in blue states. So by allowing people in blue states to have this massive deduction in their taxes, while the rest of us are having to pay for that deduction in the sense of we are basically bailing them out. We didn't ask New York to have the policies that they do.
No, Harold, I'll deal with it Harold, I can deal with it very directly.
Yeah, because I'm not sure I'm understanding.
No, I understand exactly what he's saying, and it's absolutely false, and here's why. Because my husband has a church and lives in St. Louis, Missouri, inside of Missouri, which is a red state. The money still came out of our pocket. I live in Louisiana. I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is a red state, and the money still came out of our pocket.
You're conflating two different things.
I'm talking about SALT. So let me finish.
I'm talking about SALT deductions.
I let you finish your statement. So
but you're not making sense.
Go ahead. Let Harrison, please let her finish.
Let me finish my statement. Yeah. Harold, the premise is this. What Brenton or what your guest is doing here is he is pitting us against one another because of our political affiliations. What he is saying is that we are not the United States of America. What he is
Those words
saying is
never came out of my
we have
mouth.
reduced ourselves to
Those
blue
words
states
never
and
came
red
out of my
states,
mouth.
which is why I've let you speak. Please let me finish my thought. Which is why
Viewers,
I
that
wanted
I've
further
said something that I just
clarification
said. I'm not
Harrison,
going to let you
please
do it.
let her finish. Please let her
Which is
finish.
why
Go
I
ahead,
asked. Which
Sharice.
is why I
Correct
asked
your
for
guess
further.
and say that I didn't say that.
Which is
Harrison,
why
We're
Harrison,
going to be
I asked.
honest about
Harrison,
what we said.
stop. Okay, stop, both of you. Harrison, when you were trying to explain after I asked you the question, I let you speak. Please stop interrupting her.
But she's putting words in my
Hold
mouth, and I have a problem
and
with
that's
that.
fine. And you
And
can
as the
repeat.
host, you should correct that.
Now you can't tell me how to run my house.
It's a suggestion.
Okay.
Take it or leave it.
All right. So again, like I said, we are going to be respectful on this program. Sharice, please continue.
What is happening here is this. We are making your guest is saying that we have to then decide, or that our tax code should be built around us being blue and red states. That is not how that is not how we decide as a federalist system what happens. Every state has its ability to make its own decisions. The point that your guest is making is that different things happen in blue states. Yes, different things happen in blue states because it's something called federalism. Federalism then says that inside of my state, I get to make rules and decisions about what happens in my state. When I'm the president of these United States, I'm the president for all states. I'm not the president for blue states or red states, which is why I started out my comment by saying that my husband lives in St. Louis, Missouri, which is inside of a red state, and I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is inside of a red state. And the money from this tax break that we're talking about in 17 still came out of my pocket, regardless of the fact that I lived in Louisiana or Missouri. So this idea that we should decide upon a tax code based upon red and blue states or balancing that out is absolutely disenfranchising, or walks away from the meaning of being these United States and supports the idea of being the disunited States of America.
Okay, Harrison,
the point she just made was that she basically made my point that in red states of Louisiana and Missouri, she was still feeling the impact of a SALT deduction. And when she was talking about federalism, yes,
I didn't say
federalism
anything about a
allows.
deduction, Harold.
When you talk about federalism, yes, every state under that system is allowed to basically create the laws that benefit that state. So when you have a federal law, which was the SALT tax deduction, now the issue of federalism is conflated because now you're having federal law dictate what happens in every 50 state. What Trump did was like take it out. If you have high taxes in Maryland and in New York, in New York State, guess what? You can't deduct that because people in Missouri, Louisiana, and Florida that don't have these high taxes and high cost of living, they should not be disenfranchised, if you will, based on the policies of another state. You are actually making my point in saying that the SALT deduction that Trump got rid of actually is more of a Federalist aligned policy than what you were trying to push.
Harold,
So
that is not what we were
point.
discussing. We were discussing the tax break in the bill, in the federal bill for the rich in 2017. He is now diverted to talk about a deduction that was also packaged in that bill, and that diversion was that provision in many ways was to then tear at the federalist fabrics of this country.
No,
we in the history
completely
of this
opposite.
country have always struggled with how do we then balance our different interests from California to New York, from Florida to Texas, from Montana to Alabama. That has been a problem in this country from its inception. And what your guest is doing now is highlighting the fact that it is difficult to then balance all of those things. And when you do so, and when you decide that you're going to hone in on one provision inside of a bill that was largely designed to then reduce the tax liability for the wealthy, that it end up ballooning the federal debt and the deficit of this country, it is disingenuous to come onto this program and to say that it benefited middle-class people that lived in particular states that were based upon a political party affiliation.
Let me move on to something else as it relates to the debate. And and one of the things, and we have seen this not just under the Trump era, we saw this under the Obama era, and again, this goes back to what I was talking about the Democrats being upset about how the debate went last night. Hakeem Jeffries was interviewed, you could say air quotes, as he was walking through the hallowed halls of Congress today when he was asked whether or not President Biden should not run, should step away, that somebody else should be the Democratic nominee as we head toward the Democratic convention. So, my question to you, Sharice, is that Republicans in recent history have, even if it's their PR machine, they do a better job of messaging. Okay, I think we all can agree with that. And now, as it relates to this, we have some unnamed, Democrats who are saying Biden should continue, Biden should step away. Gavin Newsom is saying, "Don't worry, let's get to work." Although some people are even saying that Newsom should be the one to face Trump in November. Your thoughts about all of that? The messaging, the Democrats not appearing to be able to solidify, and the Gavin Newsom factor.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's always difficult to stay around one set of messaging when you build a rainbow tent coalition. That's just the reality of when you get a whole bunch of diverse voices at the table. It's difficult with messaging. The biggest problem that Democrats have is the moralistic factor. We always are trying to figure out what is the most moral thing to do or the closest thing to being moral and get to that. And so that always trips us up on messaging. I believe that's why the Biden-Harris campaign has hired Keisha Lance Bottoms, right, to come into the fold to try to help with some of this messaging. So the idea of messaging has never not been a sore spot for the Democrats, and is continuously a sore spot for the Democrats. When we're talking about if he should be the nominee, I mean, the same question could be asked on the other side of the aisle. When you have someone that has been convicted by a jury of his peers of 34 felonies, should that person be allowed, right, to be the front runner in their ticket? So when we're having this conversation, we cannot have this conversation in a vacuum. The reason that Joe Biden was selected by the Democrats in 2020 to run against Trump is because we needed an old white male. Why do we need an old white male? Because an old white male is what the appetite of the American populace can stand. The idea that now we want to walk away from old white men running the country is also ludicrous. Because if we think about the very foundation of our country, it was founded and ran by old white men.
Wait a minute, let me stop you there. You said, why is that ludicrous now, when the issue of age for both of these men has been an issue since the campaigns began?
Right. And what I'm saying is that the idea of age has always been on the table. So since the idea of age has always been on the table, and historically we have chosen old white men, why is it now so much of a talking point now? Trump and Biden are not that far in age. I would prefer to choose the old man who has now diversified his cabinet, who has chosen people that look like a broad swath of America, than choosing an old white man who has already shown us that he's going to fill his cabinet with other old white men.
Harrison, what about the age factor for both? As was said last night, during the questioning, that Donald Trump, should he become president, he will be in his early 80s at the end of 4 years. Do you believe that? And I'm not necessarily speaking about Biden, Trump. I'm talking about age in general. Hope I don't get accused of being ageist, but I'm talking about this is a conversation. This is a real conversation about how the age of the House, the Senate, and someone who would be president. Do you think age matters?
No, I think competence matters. And I think Joe Biden, yeah, he's old, but he's also incompetent. And I think that's one of the main reasons why people don't like him. Not everyone ages equally. 78 years old can still be very vivacious. My grandfather is 93 years old. At 85, he was still playing softball. He still had it. Everyone ages different. 4 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, it was a very different Joe Biden than today. And calling that out isn't being ageist by any means. It's just the reality of it. And this is the horse that the Democratic Party chose. They chose because Joe Biden was the only person that had a relatively decent chance of defeating a very popular incumbent president in Donald Trump. So you made your bed, now you have to sleep in it. And the idea of Gavin Newsom coming should disturb all of your viewers, which I presume is a predominantly Black audience. You're looking at a party that is fully prepared of hopscotching over the first Black female vice president in order to have their white, gelled-haired savior in Gavin Newsom, who is proceeding over one of the worst ran states in the union. So if that's what you guys want to fall behind, having a white man come and save the day again and hopscotch over a Black female vice president, you guys go do that, and you'll see the Black vote increase even more in Trump's favor.
So,
Harold, please
go
can I
ahead,
address
Sharice.
that? Please can I address that? First off, I'm so glad we brought up Gavin Newsom or we brought it back around, because Gavin Newsom is the product of Jerry Brown. I'm a native of, I grew up in Oakland, California. My mother worked for the state of California for 32 years. And she worked there under Schwarzenegger, who gutted California. Why did he gut California? Because he didn't understand the tax structure. The tax structure in California is volatile because it's not based upon property tax. It's based upon income tax. He gutted the state. So what did the state of California had to do? They had to bring back the old white man, Jerry Brown, to become governor of the state of California again, to right the financial ship of California. And who got to tap dance in after Jerry Brown did that? Gavin Newsom did. So when we're talking about the age and the wisdom of someone that's old enough, we've already seen this play out in the innovative state of California. The idea that your guest would now then say that Kamala Harris is a problem. We first said that Black people should be scared of Kamala because of what she did as AG. And now
I didn't say she was a
we
problem.
should be champions.
I didn't say she was a problem.
Let me finish. Oh, no, let me finish.
You're
because
twisting
you
my
have
words.
switched this up so quickly. And now
Your
we should be
Wi-Fi was
upset.
disconnected.
Hold on, let her
about
finish
the
because I'm running out of time. Go ahead.
And now that we should be upset about the idea of her, about Gavin Newsom coming in as the white man who she also served with. So the idea of the split screen talking, or the talking out of both sides of your mouth from your guest, is proof and evidence as to why we need stable, sound leadership. Someone who has a track record of getting public policy through that then helps the majority of Americans. And that is what
if
Joe
you're
Biden
comfortable
is
with
going
Gavin Newsom taking the shine and taking the spotlight around away from Kamala Harris, that's your prerogative. I'm just going to sit back and watch the election results come in.
And I said absolutely nothing of the sort. And if you will go back and watch this when it airs, you will hear so.
Well, I might have missed what you said because your service was out for about 2 minutes. So apologies if I did that. But all I can say is I think the candidates, Joe Biden and Trump, should be the ones. And then you also have RFK, you have Jill Stein, and you have Cornel West. You're going to have a stacked ballot of options for the American people to choose. And I think what you're seeing in the polls, and if you just talk to people on the street, they are unhappy about what they're seeing in this country today. They may not like Trump.
I will say this because I think that's going to have to be the last word. Harrison Fields and Dr. Sharice Nelson, thank you both so much. We certainly know that one thing is for certain: no matter what happens, the voters will decide in November, and I will see you both at that time. Thank you so very, very much. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night and have a wonderful weekend, everyone.